Hey everyone, it's Victoria with Nutrition by Victoria. I have a Master's of Science in Human Nutrition, and today we're going to be reviewing Glucose Goddess and her What I Eat in a Day video that she did with the Daily Mail. She is an author and a French biochemist, and she basically tries to help people regulate their blood sugar levels through the diet that she proposes. So today we are going to check her out and see if she is offering sound advice. I have to admit, when I first heard of her, I was really excited by her username, Glucose Goddess. I was like, oh, she must be promoting a high carb, low fat diet. And so I was pretty disappointed to find out that is not the case. So let's check out her video.
Hi everybody, I'm Jessie Chespe. I'm a biochemist. I'm the author of The Glucose Goddess Method. It's my new book. It's amazing. You should get it. And this is what I eat in a day.
Okay, I just want to ask here, when did the female mullet become back in style or in style? I'm not sure if it ever was or is. Anyways, let's keep going.
I'm ready. So I always start my day with a savory breakfast. That means a breakfast that's built around protein and doesn't contain anything sweet in it.
Okay, so a high protein, low carb breakfast. Am I not surprised? Yeah, so and whole fruit for taste. Okay, so we're only eating fruit for taste, not because it has any nutritional value. Okay, gotcha.
Except in whole fruit for taste. Now, this is fundamental to keeping your blood sugar levels steady throughout the day, to unlock amazing energy, to not have any cravings.
Okay, do you guys know what she's talking about here? We're unlocking all this amazing energy, because I'll tell you about that right in a minute here.
Help you think properly. So,
okay, and it's going to help you think properly, but where is the energy coming from if it's not coming from carbohydrate? As most of you know who follow my channel, we need to be consuming sufficient amounts of carbohydrates every day to supply our body with the glucose that it needs in order to generate energy. So if you're not consuming carbohydrate in your breakfast, where do you think that energy is going to be coming from? Let's just see real quickly what she's having for breakfast, and then we'll talk about it.
my go-to savory breakfast is my 2-egg feta and tomato omelet. It's in my book. It's my favorite recipe. But this morning I had the happy halloumi with spinach, which was great.
Okay, so basically what she just proposed was a 200-calorie breakfast, so keep that in mind as well.
Delicious. Then in the
Okay. She's still talking about morning, so let's listen a little more.
morning, because I have the savory breakfast and my glucose levels are steady, I don't have any cravings. I'm not
Okay, so she's making a claim here that she's not hungry.
hungry. So, 12 rolls around, 1 p.m. rolls around, and then I'm ready to eat.
Okay, so I just want to let you guys know as a disclaimer here is that I eat a high carb, low fat breakfast, usually mostly fruit in the morning for breakfast. A lot of times it's juice, smoothie, whole fruit. I am not hungry until around noon or 1 as well. And she makes another comment here about that timing.
And that's actually a really good thing to remind yourself. If your breakfast does not keep you full for 4 hours, you're probably not doing it right.
So her argument here is that by having her low carbohydrate breakfast, it means that she's not having cravings and she's not hungry until lunchtime. And I will say that when I eat my high carb, low fat, low protein breakfast, I am not hungry until lunchtime either. So that is definitely not like the end all be all where you have to eat a high protein breakfast in order to get that kind of satiation out of your meal. Okay, so we are going to go back to breakfast, and obviously you guys have seen that she has a very low calorie, high protein, low carb breakfast. So let's talk about cortisol for a second here. So this is a normal cortisol graph chart here. You can see cortisol is going to be the highest. And somebody had a typo here, but cortisol is the highest in the morning and it's the lowest in the evening. And this is what you want. You want your cortisol to be low as you head into bed. And cortisol does correspond with our natural circadian rhythm. So the reason why our cortisol is highest in the morning is one, we are running out of glycogen. So glycogen generally lasts us about 12 to 18 hours after our last meal, and then it's time to eat. So our cortisol level is going to go up as our demand for glucose increases. So this actually helps us to wake up too. Cortisol is a glucocorticoid. So it is like a steroid. That's the family that glucocorticoids are in. So it helps us to wake up, gives us a jolt of energy. You know, cortisol is secreted from our adrenal glands that also make adrenaline. So gives us the energy to basically get out of bed and go find food. Now, what happens if we don't go and get something that's going to fulfill our glucose needs as humans? This cortisol level is going to remain high. So if you remember her saying that you're going to have all this energy after you eat this breakfast, yeah, because that breakfast that you just ate did not lower your cortisol level. It kept it elevated. So it acts as if your body is still fasting. And what will happen here as cortisol remains high? So cortisol in our blood, urine, and saliva normally peaks in the early morning and declines throughout the day, reaching its lowest level around midnight. This pattern can change if you work at night. Yeah, okay. All right, so let's get into cortisol. Where is the one that I was looking for? Okay, so cortisol raises our blood sugar. So if you're not eating carbohydrate, like she is proposing in her low calorie, high protein, low carb meal, then you're going to be using cortisol to raise your blood sugar. So when we run out of glycogen, we're going to be turning on gluconeogenesis. And cortisol actually initiates that turn on of that switch, going from glycogenolysis to gluconeogenesis. Gluconeogenesis is where we no longer have glucose available from our glycogen stores. We have to make it now from protein, and it steals that protein from your muscle tissue. So the diet she's proposing is actually one that is catabolic to muscle tissue, which means it's also going to be lowering your basal metabolic rate by sacrificing muscle tissue that has mitochondrial activity, which means that those mitochondria want to take up glucose. When there is no more glucose available, then that tissue has to be broken down in order to turn it into glucose, and then you have no more mitochondrial activity, not as much as you did prior. So because cortisol raises blood sugar, it also can, if you have chronically elevated cortisol levels, this can lead to persistent high blood sugar. So you can become type 2 diabetic and insulin resistant from simply not consuming enough carbohydrate. Okay, so how do you lower your cortisol? So it's pretty easy. We are going to come down to this study. Oh, always on the wrong page here. What one I had found? Okay, here we go. Yeah, so the presence of glucocorticoids, such as cortisol, increase the availability of blood glucose to the brain. So when she was making reference that you're gonna have all this energy and your brain's gonna work really well, it's because of cortisol. And cortisol shunting glucose to your tissue system, right? Cortisol acts on the liver, muscle, adipose tissue, and pancreas. And in the liver, high cortisol levels increase gluconeogenesis and decrease glycogen synthesis. So that's basically what I was just saying, is that that high cortisol level that we have in the morning, right, is going to be, if you're not eating something in the morning that's going to give your body glucose, you're going to be telling your body, hey, there's no glucose, so let's use cortisol to make glucose from our muscle tissue in order to feed all the organ systems of our body enough glucose instead of just supplying it on its own, right? So bad news bears because that causes insulin resistance. So essentially, what she's promoting, at least for breakfast, is an insulin resistance promoting breakfast. Okay, so how do we lower cortisol, right? And what if we want to lower cortisol and just not have to rely on cortisol to get us through the day because we want to eat a breakfast that's going to lower our cortisol level? Okay, so this is from the National Library of Medicine. Real world intake of dietary sugars is associated with reduced cortisol reactivity following an acute physiological stressor. So let's just say that stressor is the morning time and you need to eat. Okay. So we are going to go down to feel free to read this. I'll link it in the video. Read this study here. The conclusions of the study. Okay, this is my favorite sentence here. We thus speculate that stress may be driving increasing consumption of calorically dense, tasty foods, at least partially because of these foods' inhibitory effects on the stress response hormonal network. Okay, so it says basically here that the study provides novel supporting evidence in favor of a dampening effect on stress-induced cortisol responsiveness of real-world dietary intake of sugars. So they found in this study that sugar lowered cortisol. So what should you be eating for breakfast in order to have energy through the day and lower your cortisol levels so that, this natural peak stays there, but it dips, right? Instead of just keeping it high through the day because you're not consuming any carbohydrate. When you consume carbohydrate right here, it lowers down. When you don't consume carbohydrate right here, this is going to stay elevated. The same thing happens when you consume stimulants like caffeine, nicotine, and other stimulant causing drugs. All right, let's get back to the video. I hope that makes sense.
So don't worry, I have a lot of recipes to help you do it right. But come lunchtime, I'll probably have like a nice big like chicken rice salad, but I always start my meals with vegetables. So in this case,
okay, so we're doing the 50-50 plate here, the low calorie density use of vegetables in order to dilute the calories of the meal. And by the way, consuming chicken increases insulin growth like factor 1, IGF-1, which is going to increase insulin resistance and increase your the probability of developing tumors.
I would have like some arugula salad, maybe just a little bit.
Keep in mind the lack of emphasis on carbohydrate.
But when you start your meals with vegetables, the fiber in those veggies, when you eat the veggies at the beginning of the meal, will coat the upper part of your intestine and help reduce your absorption of any glucose molecules coming through afterwards.
But why are we trying to reduce glucose? Why are we trying to interfere with glucose uptake? Okay, let's get over to Percival Hemsworth, right? This was discovered in the 1930s. Okay. It is now established that the sugar tolerance is impaired by starvation, glucose starvation, or the taking of diets with a high content of fat, whilst it is improved by taking diets containing an excess of carbohydrate. I just want to read that again. It is now established that the sugar tolerance, carbohydrate tolerance, insulin sensitivity, that's what this means, is impaired by starvation or eating a diet that's high in fat. And it's improved, your insulin sensitivity improves by taking on a diet containing an excess of carbohydrate. Okay, so what she is proposing is the opposite of insulin sensitivity. She's proposing insulin resistance. And you might say, well, why is she a bestseller? Why is what she's promoting being promoted? And that's because the diet that she promotes is the same diet that they actually give to clinically to type 2 diabetic patients. It temporarily lowers your blood sugar, which means, and that's because you have less of it coming in, right? So then your insulin needs go down, but you never become insulin sensitive. You always stay insulin resistant to a degree. So if you are a type 2 diabetic, you will always require insulin. And you have to stay on this low sugar diet in order to avoid blowing out and gaining a whole bunch of weight and really exacerbating the type 2 diabetes and requiring a ton of insulin. But you're priming yourself for that by following this style of a diet.
That's really, really important.
And fiber is important for helping to keep our blood sugar balanced, but we have to have enough carbohydrate with that fiber in order to gain insulin sensitivity. And none of these peoples have insulin sensitivity. They all have insulin resistance to a degree. In her case, all she's doing is starving her cells of glucose and overutilizing cortisol in order for her body to make enough or to maintain normal blood sugar levels so that her body doesn't completely shut down. But what's going to happen over time is that insulin resistance that she already has, it's going to become exacerbated, and this style of a diet will no longer be something that can be maintained.
Some of my favorite vegetable starter recipes include featuring my favorite vegetable, backwards broccoli. That's one of my favorite recipes.
Okay, yeah, broccoli is great and healthy, but the lack of emphasis on okay, she's talking about her snack now. Lack of emphasis on the carbohydrates. I mean, yes, everyone knows vegetables are healthy, but where are the carbs? Where are the calories? You are definitely going to be in gluconeogenesis on this kind of a plan and overutilizing cortisol, not sleeping properly, and then needing caffeine in order to have energy, which she hasn't talked about at all, which is going to further elevate cortisol. And, the likelihood that she's sleeping properly, I highly doubt.
Because veggies contain that amazing fiber, superwoman, superpower substance.
Yeah, fiber is healthy. It's important for keeping your gut healthy and maintaining normal blood sugar levels, but it's not the most important factor. Carbohydrate is.
Then in the afternoon, I usually kind of feel like eating something sweet.
And you know why she feels like eating something sweet? Because sugar lowers cortisol. And what is her cortisol level like up until the afternoon? It's still going to be high. So she needs to eat some kind of sugary snack in order to lower it and relax her body.
But you may be thinking, okay, well, something sweet will definitely cause a blood sugar spike, right?
And the thing is that something sweet will cause a blood sugar spike. You want your blood sugar to increase when you eat carbohydrate, and then insulin's going to shunt that carbohydrate into your cells for energy production, and then your blood sugar is going to come back down to baseline normal levels. You want the spike, you want the elevation. You just don't want it to stay high. But what she's doing by utilizing her cortisol system in order to have glucose available for her body is she's keeping her blood sugar actually elevated through the day.
How do you avoid that?
Well, she's not keeping her blood sugar elevated through the day, but she's utilizing cortisol to maintain normal blood sugar levels. But if she was eating more calories, if she was eating more carbohydrate, if she was eating more fat, the key to her diet too is calorie restriction. She would be experiencing elevated blood glucose levels as well. So she'd get the spike and then it would stay elevated. But because she's not eating any carbohydrate, there's nothing there to keep her blood sugar levels elevated. So it comes up and then it comes back down to baseline. But she's using cortisol to keep it at baseline as opposed to just having enough carbohydrate coming in to keep her blood sugar levels normal.
Well, introduce an amazing magical ingredient. Vinegar.
Okay, now she's going to talk about how she uses vinegar to negate the blood sugar spike that she's going to get from eating her cookie.
Okay, so here's what the science has found. if you have 1 tablespoon of vinegar before eating something high in glucose, you can reduce the spike of that food by up to 30.
Did you guys see that though? Okay, what you don't want, okay, here's your baseline level, right? This is where you want your blood glucose to be at. So when you eat something, here, I'll blow this up for you guys. Sorry, I forget about that part. Okay, so your blood sugar is going to be low like this, and your body's saying, hey, it's time to eat, you know? So you go and you eat something because you want to bring it back up to baseline, right? So you are going to eat your oatmeal in this case, and what you'll see, this is what you want. You want this spike, but then it's going to come back down. So it's, you know, the likelihood, especially with something like oatmeal, it's not going to stay elevated like this. It's going to go up and it's going to come back down. Okay, this would be insulin resistance. This is probably what would happen if she actually like ate a decent serving of oatmeal, because she's programmed her body to be insulin resistant. It doesn't know how to handle, you know, carbohydrate because she hasn't been eating it. So insulin likes regular glucose availability. When there isn't enough glucose coming in, insulin gets lazy and it's like, I'm not gonna, or it gets overwhelmed because it has too much to deal with, and it will get lazy if you don't have enough coming in, and it decreases activity of our glucose transporter that brings the glucose into the cell. Okay, so here you have, look at this. This is hypoglycemia here. If you look at this, sorry.
30.
Okay, let's go back here. Yeah, so this is actually hypoglycemia. You don't want this. You want to eat something, right? And you want it just to stay level. You don't want to have this dip. This is a sign that you're under eating carbohydrates and you're having reactive hypoglycemia, where you're going to need to eat again because there's not enough glucose being available, and you're going to be utilizing cortisol to bring your glucose or your blood sugar back up again.
You could reduce the spike of that food by up to 30%.
So this vinegar is actually looks like, according to her graph, causing reactive hypoglycemia.
So in my case, I probably want to eat a cookie, but by having a vinegar drink beforehand, I'm going to reduce the impact of that cookie on my physical and on my mental health.
Yeah, so in her case, because she's already insulin resistant, that cookie, she's gonna, you know, not that she needs to do this, she just needs to eat a high carb, low fat diet and reverse that insulin resistance that she has from under eating and not eating enough carbohydrate. Yeah, then she wouldn't even have to mess around with something like this.
And in my book,
So sure, it may work, you know, but at what cost? You know, all you're doing is exacerbating the insulin resistance that's already there. You're like, this is like taking medication for a problem that you're not addressing the cause for, right?
book, it's all about vinegar and
Okay, let's get to her dinner.
some crispy kale leaves in the oven.
Okay.
And then in the evening, I will also have a veggie starter. So maybe because it's the evening, I have like 5 minutes to cook something. I might make like some nice leeks or some baked fennel, some crispy
Why does she only have 5 minutes to cook something?
kale leaves in the oven. And then during dinner, I love having like some nice big dish of pasta.
There she is. She's getting the carbs in. And why is she going for the carbs? Because in order to sleep properly, again, I'm going to show that she needs carbohydrates to lower her cortisol. So her cortisol's been high all day. She's been calorie restricting. She's been eating low carb. So in order to bring that cortisol back down, she needs to eat those carbs. And in her case, those carbs are going to be stored as fat more readily than they would to be just like shunted normally in the case of somebody who's insulin sensitive for energy production and glucose or glycogen creation.
But again, because I have it after the veggies.
And you guys might say, well, what are you talking about? You know, she's skinny, blah, blah, blah. That's because she's under eating. She's eating low carbs. So she's going to have a certain level of dehydration. But her adrenal function is going to be taxed. And if she actually ate the amount of food that she wanted, she would start hoarding fat. What she's done is primed herself for fat storage. through a certain level of insulin resistance. So if she started eating more calories, she would be insulin resistant. Her blood glucose level would stay elevated. So all she's done is basically put a Band-Aid on a bad diet, right?
Starter, I'm reducing the impact of that on my body and I'm helping myself. And finally, after dinner, I try to get 10 minutes of movement in. Now, this can be just walk.
Okay, so why is she waiting until dinner to, oh, wait, because that's when she ate her carbohydrates. Now she has the energy to be active is after dinner.
Walking for 10 minutes, doing the dishes, or even sitting at my couch watching a TV show and just doing some calf raises. Now, if you do,
Okay, are you seriously that undercarb that you can't stand up and do calf raises?
oh, it's hard to do on the chair. Basically, you get what I'm saying. Like, do some calf raises while sitting at your couch, and the muscles in your calves, as they contract, will absorb some of the glucose molecules and reduce the spike of.
And she's right. Exercise does lower insulin needs by moving the glucose into your muscle cells to create ATP. But you should be eating the carbohydrates throughout the day so you have the energy to be more active and do all the things that you want to do and have insulin sensitivity. That is about it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed my analysis of Glucose Goddess. I haven't watched a whole ton of her content, but I'm sure that the majority of it is pretty much the same. So basically, all you want to take home from this video is that by eating a high protein, low carb, low calorie diet, you are going to still have a certain level of insulin resistance. And when you start eating more calories, you can expect to have elevated blood glucose levels, like sustained ones. And you're also going to be turning a lot more of the food that you eat into fat via de novo lipogenesis. But in order to fix all that, you just want to eat a high carb, low fat, sufficient calorie diet, and be consistent with it. And you'll become insulin sensitive over time. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.